the New Orleans Saints are scheduled heading into 2021 to be more than $75 million over the salary cap. For those of you that are unaware how that works, in the NFL, every team is basically granted a budget, an allowance of money that they can spend on their teams for all positions, for coaches, for all of that. There's just a total cap that they're available. That cap, typically, depending on the NFLPA, the NFL Players Association, and the NFL, they discuss where they have agreements on, the salary cap going up based off of business and demand and salaries and whatever, and the cost of living. This season, it goes up a little bit more once again. So the Saints, for whatever reason, felt that they needed to buy in last season and give a lot of people extensions. And over the last couple of years, they have spent quite a bit of money on some key players. Now, this obviously, as I stated, every year, this puts a team on a cap strain, as they call it, and contracts sometimes spread and get worse over the course of the years that the players sign. So next year, a lot of players are getting paid bulk amounts of their contract in one shot, which puts basically New Orleans in between a rock and a rock, not a rock and a hard place. They have absolutely no playroom. They have no wiggle room. Again, for those of you that don't understand, Alvin Kamara, Michael Thomas, Drew Brees' contract, it did get renegotiated, but I'm just saying overall for like big player names, you have DeMario Davis, you have Cameron Jordan, Quan Alexander, just a number of all-pro players that were given massive extensions because they rightfully deserved it. But again, when you only pay a handful of players, basically over 50% of your salary, you don't have money going forward. You don't have money to bring in other people. You don't have enough money to basically pay your bench or play other positions. So New Orleans in a tough spot. Obviously, if I'm looking at this correctly, New Orleans is looking at, where did it go?
New Orleans is what, 75? They're still $70 million.
Yeah, they are, but it's estimated all of their cap space is about $72 million as of right this second. But they have a lot of players that are coming up that they need to re-sign or let go, and that's going to make it worse. So they need to basically revamp this whole roster. We have their left tackle, Teron Armstead, that's available. And obviously we know the left tackle market can be very expensive. We had Ryan Ramczyk, one of their all-pro guards, or their right tackle. I forget what side, but he's on the right side of protecting the quarterback. We all know that side of the line can be quite expensive. Marshawn Lattimore, Pro Bowl, all-pro corner out of Ohio State. We know that his market is going to be upwards over $15 million a year. We have Marcus Williams, Sheldon Rankings, Trey Hendrickson, one of their best pass rushers. People are going to seek out paydays, and a lot of these players are going to know off rip. Only some can be tagged, aka franchise tag, where certain teams have the opportunity to kind of lock a player down for the year and say, hey, we don't have the money to give you a full contract extension, but we're at liberty to give you this amount of money based off of the total average of what the top playered positions are getting. So they kind of average out the top receiver money, and that'll be the franchise tag amount for a receiver if they would decide to tag somebody. Yep. So a lot of these players are in question. A lot of players are being paid that they probably don't deserve to be paid. I mean, there are a list of players, and I'll let you get into it, but I just wanted to give everybody a synopsis of how it all works. Point blank period, New Orleans is fucked. $75 million is pretty bad. So,
and this is already accounting for Drew Brees' contract. So they already dropped Drew Brees' base salary down to just over $1 million. So going into this offseason, they were basically either at or above $100 million against the cap going into this offseason before they even touched Drew Brees' contract, which basically kind of signifies that he's not even going to be on the team next year. And he's still kind of mulling retirement at this point. But outside of him, yeah, New Orleans is in a world of trouble. And really what you're seeing here is the consequences of going for it. Look, they had a couple years left with Drew Brees, and they had multiple opportunities to get at least a shot at the Super Bowl, and it just didn't work out. And now they're going to pay the price for it because if I remember right, the cap just for this year is, I think, somewhere around like $100 to $185 million. And as of right now, New Orleans' payroll is just above like 250 or 260 million dollars. Like they've got a significant amount of cap to still cut before they can even get close to
Total
the
all
caps.
players, $260 million.
Yes, I mean they got a lot of way. They got a long way to go here, and I'll give you a good player of somebody where they're just completely overpaying for the player at this point. Taysom Hill. Taysom Hill is pretty much just a utility player. He plays maybe 15, 20 snaps a game, and he's getting paid a base salary of just around $10.75 million. His cap hit for this year is just over $16 million for a guy that doesn't even play the majority of the snaps. He could be a cap casualty this offseason. I'm looking across the rest of the roster here. Teron Armstead, he's $16 million against the cap this offseason. You got Michael Thomas, who's basically
Janoris Jenkins.
Yeah. So look, if I'm New Orleans, look, maybe you move Michael Thomas this offseason. Maybe you could get some draft picks back for him just to get him off your books going into next season, just because there's no way that they're going to be able to keep all of these guys with the cap hit that they have. I think Cam Jordan, I think he stays. I could see Taysom Hill getting cut or being moved. Just kind of looking at some of the defensive players here, I think Demario Davis, he stays. He's pretty much the captain of the defense at this point, maybe outside of maybe Malcolm Jenkins and Marshawn Lattimore, but he is a stud at that linebacker spot for him. You mentioned Marshawn Lattimore. I wonder if they're mulling the idea of maybe moving on from him just to cut the cap at this point. But yeah, I think New Orleans is going to be in for some dark days here moving forward, just because these are the consequences that you get when you go for it. And I mean, when you're $70 million against the cap, they've got some work cut out for them. And I don't envy who's ever running the front office for New Orleans at this point, because this is a nightmare scenario that you're dealing with here.
Oh, big time. So, I mean, like, just like you said, Taysom Hill, don't understand why he got paid all that money. Michael Thomas, with the injury and the off the field issues, aka the practice situation and the problems with the coaching staff, you obviously have Janoris Jenkins being a little bit on the older side. He played decent last year, but for him to be getting paid $13 million right this moment, and then obviously, like we both said, Marshawn Lattimore, young. We know he's going to chase that bag. We know that he's going to try to ask anywhere from $15 to $18 million, that top corner money. And New Orleans just doesn't have it. Does that mean that he decides to leave? Does that mean he decides to request a tag or a trade? I don't know. But New Orleans has not only players to consider moving off their books, but players to retain to build their future. Malcolm Jenkins, $32 million. He's owed $32 million over the next 4 years. Plays every snap. Great player. He's 33.
Yeah.
When you're done paying him, he's going to be 36. That's just ridiculous to me. To invest in a player at his age, I would have given him a 2-year, maybe a $20 million deal, something like that. $32 million for 4 years, crazy. Michael Thomas, like I said, he's having off-season ankle surgery. He decided to play through it for Drew Brees. Ironically enough, Drew Brees ended up getting hurt himself, so they didn't really get to play together much. And Michael Thomas missed almost, if not more than half the season. So he didn't really get to produce. And then they saw the dark side of Michael Thomas punching somebody in practice, him kind of throwing tantrums on the sideline, him being disgruntled with the play calling this season. So, I mean, do they move their star all-pro number one wide receiver this offseason with absolutely a complete question mark at the quarterback position? Possibly. Could New Orleans go into a full rebuild mode? Maybe, but they just gave their franchise, Alvin Kamara, a massive extension, which doesn't pretty much start to hit their books until next season anyway. So we got a lot of aging people on this team. We have a lot of expiring contracts, and we have a lot of questionable contracts. But at the end of the day, the city of New Orleans, as much stuff as it's been through, as much stuff as it's overcome, and as great as a football tenure as they've had over the last, 2 decades or so since Drew Brees got there, they've only accumulated 1 Super Bowl, and I forget the statistic. I'm pretty sure I said it on one of my podcasts. Over the last 5 or 7 years, they have the highest winning percentage in the NFL, but they did not accumulate anything more than an NFC championship appearance. So it's just ridiculous that they bought in so much. They spent so much money, and they invested in so many players that it didn't pan out to do anything. Obviously, I'll always have a resentment towards this franchise for taking the Super Bowl away from Peyton Manning in 2010, but it is what it is. I think that, karma's a bitch, and, it's come to get you. So y'all got to figure that out, because I have no idea what you're going to do this season.
Yeah, they had great chances. They had, I believe it was the divisional round matchup against the Minnesota Vikings, and they got beat on the last play of the game where Stephon Diggs got the game-winning touchdown in the Minneapolis
Miracle.
They had the NFC Championship game against the Rams where that horrendous pass interference call was not called for.
We don't even talk about that. That was the worst no call in history, period.
That was probably going to be a trip to the Super Bowl where they were going to play against the Patriots. And then this year, you were at home, you played against the Bucs, and had Jared Cook not fumbled that ball, I want to say probably halfway through the third quarter, more than likely they were going to be in a matchup between themselves and the Green Bay Packers in the NFC Championship for another possible run at the Super Bowl. But Jared Cook fumbles the ball. Drew Brees ends up throwing, I believe, 3 interceptions in the second half.
Yeah, I think it's
3. He had a really bad second half, cost him a chance at another Super Bowl, and it looks like that Drew Brees is not going to be the quarterback for New Orleans this year. I think pretty much New Orleans is moving on from him. Now, whether or not that he retires or not, we're still kind of seeing him work out. I don't know if he's going to actually retire at this point, but at this point, doesn't really have anything left to prove. There would be some teams maybe going after him if he were still available, but he's still kind of mulling it over at this point. But yeah, I think New Orleans is going to be in for a rough ride here for these next couple years. And it's just going to be tough because the Saints had multiple opportunities to go and get a Super Bowl from Drew Brees in the latter half of his career. Just didn't work out. And who knows who's going to lead the team offensively next year? Could it be Jameis? Are they going to put Taysom Hill at quarterback? Taysom Hill's not even, I wouldn't even really consider him like a full-time quarterback because they use him for so many different purposes. So who knows? Could they go after Alex Smith? Are they going to go with Jameis? There's just so many unknowns with New Orleans at this point. They're going to have to work them out throughout this offseason. And I think it's going to be a dark time in New Orleans just because, you're letting go a Hall of Fame quarterback in Drew Brees. And it's tough to follow that up. Look at what happened with the Patriots after one season without Brady. And they had a really tough year with Cam Newton running the show. And I think if I'm looking at the Saints right now, I think Jameis is probably going to be their best bet, but it's Jameis.
He signed a 1-year deal, though. That's the thing. So we don't even know if he's coming back.
I mean, at this point, they're going to have to get him on the cheap because they don't have the cap space.
It don't make no difference because Jameis ain't going to take that hit because Jameis already feels like he got slapped in the face when they gave the starting role to Taysom this season when Drew got hurt. Yeah. If I'm Jameis's camp, I'm saying I'm letting you guys burn. Yeah. You screwed me over and you don't have enough money to pay me. I'm out of here. I think you let them. If you wanted to bank on Taysom so hard this season, you can bank on him next season playing 16 games. That's my mindset if I'm Jameis. Obviously, it depends on the market, but if he's got, other suitors that are going to be able to pay him a little bit more, even if it is to back somebody up, they don't have the money next season either. It really it's a lose-lose situation if Jameis goes over there. So I say Jameis is out, man.
The one person that I'm really going to be feeling for these next couple of years is going to be Alvin Kamara because he's pretty much going to be the sole big player for them. Because honestly, I don't see Michael Thomas being on this team that much longer. I think just
unless they're stupid and they keep him.
The issues that you brought up with him before, they are definitely a factor. His cap hit is around $19 million this year, and look,
it's 23. Well, 19 total, but if they cut him, it's 23.
They're not gonna cut him. That dead cap hit is way too much. I think at this point they could definitely work out a trade with somebody though. At least get some.
It's a lot of money to absorb for an ankle injury right now. An ankle, a full reconstructed almost. He fucked up his ankle pretty bad.
But you're getting a premier wide receiver, and that's kind of the trade-off. Is he has a huge cap hit, but he's a true number one. And
hey, Indianapolis, if y'all hear this, go for it.
You think Chris Ballard would make the move?
Absolutely not. They're going to demand a first-round pick minimum. No shot.
I think, what do you think Michael Thomas would get? like a first and a third?
I think he definitely demands a first because of the potential. However, it's similar to the Carson situation, not necessarily because of the play, but because of the injury. And when he did play, he didn't really produce other than maybe 2 games. That did hinder his value. So I would say if it's not a first, it's definitely a second and a third. But if we're talking prime Michael Thomas, who knows? We might even be talking about 2 picks because 2 first-round picks because he's that big of a game changer. He broke Marvin Harrison's record for a reason. He has been one of the most premier and consistent offensive talents that the league has ever seen in quite some time. So when he's healthy, we know that he can produce, but it's all a matter of who's throwing him the ball. He had a Hall of Fame, one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, giving him the ball basically whenever he wanted because he was open in Drew Brees. But can any other quarterback give him the targets and the attention that he needs? I don't know.
Well, I remember the last big receiver to get traded from New Orleans was Brandon Cooks. And I believe, if I remember right, New England traded a first and a fourth for him. And I think Michael Thomas is a better receiver than Brandon Cooks was at the time when he got traded.
Yeah,
So
he's a better matchup. He's what, 6'4", 6'3"? He's
I think,
huge.
he's like 6'2", 6'3". I mean, did you mention that he has the all-time receiving record?
Yeah, that's what I said. He beat
Yeah.
Marvin Harrison's record.
Yeah.
Trust
So,
me, I watched that game in pain.
but but you're getting a number one receiver, and that's going to be the trade-off. But you got to take that cap hit, and that cap hit is going to be tough to absorb.
Yeah, I know. I said it jokingly. The Colts can't afford that. We're already taking Carson's big contract. We need to re-sign players. We go and take this man's contract, we're screwed. We're gonna have no money to re-sign anybody. So that's not possible. But yeah, man, I'm curious to see what they do because Sean Payton's not an idiot. Their GM and front office has always found ways to make things work over the last couple of years. So if they got to restructure, if they got to cut, my thing is if they cut these players or they let these players walk, or if they restructure contracts and let them walk or trade, there are going to be some talented people available to sign for cheap because New Orleans is going to pay out a lot of their contracts if they do end up cutting certain players. So I think the number one priority, I've been saying his name all offseason, and the offseason has only been a month, but Trey Hendrickson, he had like 12 sacks last year. He demands a double team in a lot of instances, and he is just a very underrated pass rusher. And I think that he demands some attention. He's not going to get paid top pass rusher talent, but $10 to $12 million for Chris Ballard to kind of pay attention to, and say we're not going to get a Shaq Barrett. We're obviously not. We obviously didn't get JJ Watt, but somebody middle, right above the pack, above average pass rusher, somebody to pay attention to. Marshawn Lattimore, who's ever willing to give up picks or assets, that's a great top 10 cornerback in the league. They have a great Teron Arm. I always get his first name messed up. Teron Armstead, one of the better left tackles for the blind side. The Colts need a left tackle right now, but again, what he's going to demand is going to be too much more than what we can afford. So, like I said, there's going to be a lot of available players in this offseason just from this roster alone. And some teams are going to benefit. Like the saying goes, another man's trash, another man's treasure. In this case, there's a lot of treasure to be found.
But in the end, New Orleans is screwed for next year.
Big time. Big facts. Love it. Love every second of it.
And Tampa is going to be like, all right, well, pretty much got the division to ourselves.
Yeah, Atlanta ain't doing nothing, and you know damn well that Carolina ain't doing shit. Even if they do get Deshaun Watson,